Welcome to Monday in Westeros. I'm Grandmeister Todd A., and I'm joined by Lord Commander of the Night's Watch, Taylor Trask, and Emily Kelly Cunin, first of her name, maker of video games, mother of cats, Khaleesi of fan theories, the Get Turnt, ruler of her condo. It is Season 8, Episode 5. It is called The Bells.
The Bells.
I told you all.
Told you so. Can I just say before we begin,
No.
I am honored
No.
to take the mantle of Lord Commander of the Night's Watch, because at this juncture, it has got to be one of the
really
easiest
easy
jobs
job.
in all of Westeros.
Okay, I'll allow that.
You
But
can
I
hang out with
just told
Tormund.
you before we started recording what I was going to say first.
You can hang out with Tormund Giantsbane and drink and just have the
Man.
best time, barbecue, talk about old times.
Yeah,
I'm game.
I mean, it is still winter, right? Like winter's still coming. The
Yeah.
seasons weren't affected by the Iceman, were they? I don't
No.
know. Anyway, I told you both I had like an opening salvo for you. Emily, I'm going to you first.
Cool.
This is the question I worked on all night to prepare for you. What the hell?
Okay, no joke. As I'm sitting there watching, I go, "Frick! I'm gonna have to like defend my Danny love to them." What's my what's my eloquent argument against this?
I got this text from Emily right before you joined the recording that said, "WTF did I just watch?" So I was already talking to Taylor when I got that, and I was like, "Oh boy."
Yeah, I mean, we're gonna go into it more. I'm not really sure. Like I'm gonna have to do a whole thing, and we'll talk about it in the themes. Mostly my argument comes in the themes that we'll talk about. So, but yeah, Peter is sitting there and like half the episode, my jaw is just like open, tears are in my eyes. I'm like, what the fuck is happening? Like the whole episode, pretty much.
Did you come away from it like, I mean, like artistically, how did you feel like it was a good episode in that? Like, did it connect the story pieces, all that kind of stuff? Or did you feel like it was kind of a mess?
No, it was a great episode. And I think if you felt like it was a mess, it probably should have felt like that, because that's what war is. Like in the moment, they really put us, when we're going with Arya, when we're going with these other characters, as things are happening and exploding and burning and crashing. And, it should have felt just like, I never had to say his last name. Taylor always says his last name like amazing. Miguel, the director. Sapochnik. When we did Battle of the Bastards, and the part where Jon is like drowning in dead bodies, like that's kind of one of the just most like chilling, but like you feel it in that moment. And I felt it throughout this whole episode of just this panic and fear and raw emotion and just death and horror, and just like, so it was an incredibly good episode in that sense of that you were feeling exactly what all the characters were feeling. In the moment.
Exactly what you just said. I totally agree with. This was one of there have been especially with the show, although this could just be confirmation bias playing out in my own mind, but especially with this show, there have been so many episodes where I'm like, am I being like, are you trying to manipulate me to feel one way about a character and I'm feeling a different way? Or this one was one where I felt like everything that character is doing, I am feeling exactly on the same page.
Yeah, for sure.
And it was really interesting because I have not gotten that from Game of Thrones for sure. But Taylor, what Emily just said dovetails very nicely into what I was going to ask you, which was you've texted me various times during today and said that people on the internet are losing their shit over this episode. And I haven't tuned into that. What are they losing their shit over? What's happening?
Yeah, there is I can't say large. It might be large. It may just be, it is very vocal. Let's just say that contingent of fans who absolutely thought this betrayed every single one of their characters, the storyline, who like the show that they had in their heads. This episode just sort of took a giant axe hammer to and just chopped to pieces.
So not just Daenerys.
Not just Daenerys. That seems to be the focus of a lot of the ire, but like just a lot of, and maybe it's because Daenerys is such a lightning rod for them that they are just trying to grasp at anything that makes them angry. But I'm just, and it seems like there's kind of just two camps. One is that group, and the other group is like, no, this is completely what should have happened. It all makes perfect sense. that you're suffering from some other sort of anxiety that is unrelated. And like, and I find myself very firmly in that second camp, because I'm like, I get if you were of Team Danny that this is tough, but man, nothing in this episode betrays what the show has done to date. Nothing. Maybe the logic of behold a pale horse at the end. I don't know if that's
oh my God, yeah.
what that, maybe we can get into that. But I mean, that
God,
seems
I'm so
a little
glad
weird.
you said it that way.
Everything else is absolutely in line with where the story was headed. So there's none of this should have been so shocking that it fundamentally disrupts your enjoyment of the show.
Wow, that was you. Yeah, that was not just a report. You were offering some opinion there. Well, what I've been curious about, because I did get text from another friend before we started recording, and I was asking her how she felt about it. And I don't think she thought it was a bad episode, but she came away with clearly different feelings about like Jon Snow than I did. And I'm sorry that I can't remember the exact word she used, but basically that he was kind of useless and didn't really do anything. And I thought it was a really honest Jon Snow portrayal. Like I thought everything he did was very Jon Snow.
It was useless, but you're right. It was totally within where that character would be at that moment. Yeah. It's sort of like, what the hell is going on? Like, poor guy is just looking around going, what did I sign up for? Who did I fall in love with? What? Why?
Yeah.
Oh God. And then finally snapping out of it, and snapping out of that melees and helping people, and actually being Jon Snow too, which is, hey, I got to make the best of the situation.
Yeah, and I think Pennywise, still going to call him Pennywise, but
do it.
Pennywise said it pretty well after the episode of like, that John was in a sort of denial too. Like that it took him a moment to realize like, oh shit, like I thought everything was going to be cool. And Kit Harington, dang, he was so bad when we first met him. And then as an actor, and he's so good now, just that's like anyone who's grown up on screen, just like all those Harry Potter kids and stuff. And, the moment where the first Lannister soldier like drops his sword and Jon has like a deep exhale, like, thank God I don't have to kill all these people. And then all of a sudden it's like an all out bloody war. Like he's fought in 3 really bloody, terrible battles at this point.
Wow.
And so this is his 4th one. And it's just like, he knows the reality of what's about to happen and knows what men turn into when faced with these kinds of decisions. And like, dang, it was so sad to say. I was like, man, like, but he really like stayed true to himself, I thought, too. It took him a minute to snap out of it. And then he was like, oh my God, I have to stop them. I have to stop my own men, even if that means killing them, to help these people and get out of here.
Yeah.
You made a point earlier, Emily, I want to come back to. This episode was a lot more like Battle of the Bastards than The Long Night was. I think The Long Night was more analogous to Winds of Winter. Even though there was a battle, it was less the horrors of war and more sort of the theater and the dance that episode did to get us to that final Night King killing moment. It was, and the Winds of Winter was also just a lot of amazing moments in this almost like lyrical kind of song that played out over the course of the episode. Whereas this was just much more visceral, much more like, I loved your analogy to the mountain of bodies that Jon Snow had to just crawl out of and over. And this had a lot of just that same, just utter visceral destruction and horror and really boots on the ground kind of feeling of what this would have been like.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. I want to circle back to something that I think all 3 of us touched on about the, that moment where like Jon was acting like he's in that, he's been Jon Snow up to a point, and then he has to realize like, what I thought was happening is, or, who I thought this person was is not true. And I felt like that was like Arya was having that own realization within herself. And Tyrion also, I think, was having that, like Tyrion and Jon were having that, oh no, moment of realization. But I just want to bring in Arya because I was very frustrated at one point with her story in this episode, and then realized like, oh no, she's she's figuring it out. Like that's what it is,
Were you frustrated that she became a little cowardly or a little bit unsure of herself? Is that?
No, it was just the I don't know. This was a movie with a movie. This was an episode with a lot of just very like intentionally uncomfortable moments for characters. But yeah, I'll step aside of the Arya question to
I think I know what you're talking about now that I'm thinking about it, Todd.
What's that?
Are you talking about, so when her and the Hound are pushing through the gates and she looks back and basically she like sidesteps that woman and her child and knows that she is leaving those people out there, but then as soon as she sees them again, she can't leave them to die?
Basically, in a less specific way, yes, that's what I'm talking about. Like I felt like she's
trying to be like this cold-hearted killer and she just can't do it.
I think it was like when she thanks Sandor, which was a hugely powerful moment that we should probably spend more time on. I think at that point I expected her to run away and realize like, I've got to help people get the hell out of here. But instead it seemed like, oh no, it's all about just her surviving. And I kept thinking to myself, like, you have gone through so much to get to this point. Don't let Arya go out this way. Like, this is just so awful, but I realized like, no, I think that is her story, is that she did go through all this sort of violence against herself and that she was also perpetrating. And now she's realized like, no, I really have to struggle to get out of this. And Benny Wise did a great thing in the recap where they talk about she actually has the longest way to go because they'd sort of mapped out the city. And, she's the only one, I guess, that really gets out of the Red Keep.
Can I make it struck me too that this is the first time she's been back to King's Landing since she left the moments after her father was beheaded. So I am guessing being in that city, they didn't expressly hit you over the head with it, but I would imagine the subtext or the subtlety that Maisie Williams was playing was, oh my God, last time I was here, I just saw my dad brutally murdered.
Yeah.
And it might revert her, just that environment might revert her back into a more innocent, childlike posture, even if it's unintentional or subconscious.
Taylor, didn't you compare one of these episodes to Purgatory?
Did I do
a few episodes ago?
Purgatory, huh?
I just had this crazy idea that like the Red Keep is hell, and everyone like the people that figure it out try to escape it. Like Sansa figured it out and escaped and never wanted to go back.
Oh my God.
Cersei decided that's where she lives. And so she died in the Red Keep. And Daenerys was so envious of the people who lived there that she never even considered it might be hell. And she literally turned it to fire and then went to live there.
Wow. Holy shit.
And so Arya is the one that like kind of walks back. She's escaped, but then she walks back into hell thinking she can beat it. She can be the one that kills Cersei. And then she realizes like, this is the worst thing I've ever done and has to run for her life and literally beholds a pale horse of death and gets on it and rides out.
Dang.
That's some subtext. That's the kind of shit that like Charles Webstone and I talk about on our Prisoner podcast, where it's just like, and stuff that like the mark of good writing is that you get all the subtext, even if it wasn't intentional. So like that makes perfect sense to me. My guess is Benny Wise didn't even think about that. They're like, okay. I mean, maybe it'd be cool, but like I would guess that's, I love that metaphor.
Now, cultural criticism is all about imagining crazy things and just sticking it on top of something else that it's not written for that.
But it colors it in such a profound way. God, I love that.
To get back to like to get us back on track, we were going to address some themes of the episode, and there are two that like the one that Taylor brought up, and the actually Taylor, we'll circle back to your other one. But Emily, you mentioned both of these, which are grief. And I think it's very much tied to the other one you mentioned, which is nature versus nurture. And I think we all have our own ideas on how that played out through this episode. But do you think, what do you think Daenerys's motivation in that moment is? Is it grief, or is it, I keep wanting to say, is it anger? But I also made this note to myself that anger is depression turned outwards, Yeah. And I'm just feeling like she never dealt with the shit she needed to deal with. And
yeah. And You're exactly correct. And they mentioned this in the inside the episode too. I like watching those. I know people think they're kind of like self-serving to anyways, but I always feel like I kind of learned something, or at least like learn how to put my own thoughts into better words.
First time I actually didn't watch that because I didn't want them to tell me how to think about the episode. I'm like, I'm still unsure. I need to ponder it for a little longer.
Ponder by myself. So I mean, they kind of go into it, and we've seen it kind of over the course of the last like 3 episodes, really, of Dany has lost pretty much everyone she's ever loved, like in her life, in a very short amount of time, and basically the last like 3 episodes of the people. She's lost Jorah, she's lost Missandei, now she's losing Jon after the revelation that he's related to her. She felt like she lost Ferris, of that the people closest to her are betraying her, that she also felt betrayed by Tyrion. She feels betrayed by Sansa Stark, and that because she grew up living so far away and grew up with these stories of how this place, this home that was built by her ancestors, was taken from her, that everything was taken from her family by these other people. She never really got to deal with that in a very healthy way, and because it was always about revenge. It was never about, let's go back and reclaim our family name and show them that Targaryens are here. It's always like, let's go back and conquer the entire continent once again and murder everyone, like murder all of our enemies. And I think the 2 themes that I want to talk about the most is, one, grief, because she's lost a lot of people in a very short amount of time, but also just nature versus nurture. And that they said this twice. They said it in like the previously on Game of Thrones, in the previously, and then Varys said it again to Jon, of that you flip when a Targaryen is born, you flip a coin and the world holds its breath. And I think they are the last 2 Targaryens that we know of, at least in the show, and they are very much 2 sides of the same coin, of that. They were both raised away from their true home, or raised away from their true families, raised in a way that was different from one another. Jon was raised to be noble and good and, sacrifice himself for the greater good and be a good soldier. And Dany was raised to conquer a continent. She was raised from birth, basically, by the brother and by whoever was there, to murder a bunch of people and like see everyone who is against her as an enemy. And I think at this point, when she's finally in King's Landing, something she's never seen before, something that only exists in her, in the stories that her brother told, I think it just really, something snapped in her, and I think there's a big difference between, her dad as the Mad King, because by all accounts, he really just was legitimately mentally ill. That they always said that from his incestuous relationship of marrying his sister and a long line of his parents marrying their siblings and cousins and nieces and nephews and whatever, that he just kind of deteriorated and became paranoid, and that's why he was crazy. With Dany, I think there's just only so much one person can take.
Yeah.
And this is the culmination of 8 seasons of being sexually assaulted, sold, abused, kidnapped. The love of her life dies, being tricked, having to give birth, having to give up giving birth, losing her children, losing another love of her life, losing her best friend, losing her advisor, feeling alone here in this strange continent. And I think she looked at that Red Keep and looked at this city and just said, fuck it. Like that she was just like, this, every ounce of anger and pain she's had to keep down over all these years to get to this point, she just lost it, man.
Like, you know what? I'm going to give you an interesting counterpoint, addendum to that. You sort of hinted at it before, and I don't know if this is where you were going, but she also saw King's Landing, that in her mind she had built up what it was: the fairy tales, the myth, the lore, the people telling her, as she experienced Jorah, all her advisors over the years. Like, she had created this version of King's Landing in her own mind. And over the last 2 or 3 episodes, basically that version was all but completely. She learned completely that version will never exist. So when she finally gets there, it's like, well, I can't have the version of King's Landing I want. Who cares about this old place. She completely detached herself from any of the people, any of the places. It's almost like King's Landing that she burned down wasn't real anymore. So it didn't matter. She had no moral compass guiding her anymore, because what she had, this sort of Shangri-La in her mind, was never going to exist. So then why should this exist? What's the point? It's because I was trying to justify to myself, why the hell would she take that final step? I told Todd, versus, she was eyeing down the Red Keep. She could have easily just gone to the Red Keep and tore that down, almost as a sign or an inadvertent symbol of tearing down the old world or the tyranny and making something new. It could have served a number of purposes, revenge being a huge one, but she didn't. She tore through that city methodically, like a serial killer, just going left and right and back and forth, weaving her way to the Red Keep. And I was always trying to figure out, like, well, why would she be that dispassionate? Why would she separate herself from the lives and the livelihoods of these people? After Tyrion told her numerous times, Jon told her, like, she knew that what she was getting into, but she completely removed herself from that. And I do wonder, I think you nailed it, where she was, the myth and the story of King's Landing and the Targaryen dynasty and who she is and how awesome she is. And you can almost think of all the fan love for Dany as almost like a prayer sent to that character, that she is going to be this wonderful woman to inherit this kingdom on a hill and it will all go her way. And when that just absolutely shut down, even the man she decided was the new love of her life decided he couldn't love her that way anymore. It was all gone, all of it. So that final moment of her sitting on the stoop, staring down the Red Keep, I'm almost looking down in a new light of her going, well, fuck it. If I can't have that, there's no point for this to exist. And it just became this cold, calculating thing.
So, you used the word calculating. Do you think any part of that was her rationalizing, these people, the people of this country are not going to love me. So I am really going to take that last moment, like that last movement, and make them fear me.
Yeah. I mean, when she said that, I mean, it was what they always have really cool. She always has the best lines, I think, in the whole show. Like, there's always, I don't want to be a cog in the wheel. I want to break the wheel, from a couple seasons ago. And now this one of let it be fear. I think part of it was, she needed to, it's not like she destroyed the entire city. I mean, it's pretty leveled at this point, but it's not like every single person in the city died. So I think there is some sort of rationalization there of the people who are left will fear her as their new leader, which is sad. But the other thing is, like you said, it Todd, of that depression or anger is just depression faced outward. Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's absolutely correct. I have clinical depression. I've had depression off and on since I was probably about 16 years old. And when you get into, when you get so low, and I think this is really Dany's very lowest moment that we've ever seen her, you do become kind of numb and you really don't care what happens to other people, to yourself. I think she was just in this moment of pure anger and hatred of anyone that she saw got in her way. And you could tell, and I liked this, that they cut to her when she's kind of making this decision. She's staring through Keep. She's obviously really emotional.
Oh yeah.
That she was crying and she was, very upset. And I think that she just made a decision in the heat of the moment from this really, really hurt place. And one of my favorite expressions that a teacher, a counselor told me in high school was that hurt people hurt people.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what Dany did today.
I love that. And to piggyback on that, on something you said in there, is that I think in that moment, I don't know that she's realizing this, but like Jon and Tyrion and Arya sort of figuring out that what they bet on was wrong. I think Daenerys, she doesn't necessarily figure it out, but the person she is most angry at is herself. She has had ideas of what this will be like when she lands in this country for, longer than we've known her, like since she went to Essos to escape,
she was
the
a
Baratheons.
baby girl.
Yeah. And she gets there and it's like, the expectations you have had for your whole life were wrong. And now you're sitting on this nuclear bomb, and are you going to drop it or,
She's sitting on a nuclear bomb without any of her better angels on her shoulders, that she's lost them all. Remember back, I'm actually reading, there's a wonderful piece on IO9 that kind of breaks down some of this, but they mentioned something in particular. I'm just going to quote this real quick. For example, in season 5, a Harpy's son was taken into custody for killing an Unsullied. Dany's first instinct was to butcher him, but Sir Barristan Selmy convinced her to give him a fair trial. He served as under her father, and since she was following a similar path. So even back in the day, Barristan Selmy was, when he was still alive. Think about it. She had him. She had Jorah. She had Tyrion. She had, for a while, Varys. She had, when Jon loved her, or she wanted him to love her romantically. That was the case. Missandei, Grey Worm, when he was still rational. Like, she's had a bunch of people around her and influencing her who have kept her on the narrow path, have kept her on, from becoming her father. Oh my God.
Well, did you fall off your microphone? What just happened?
That was amazing. You heard that? I'm still alive and well. They won't silence me. No, there's no one left, right? Tyrion was the last one, and his voice, I'm sorry, but his voice wasn't strong enough. No. He was the only one. Because Jon, once she realized he didn't love her the same way anymore, that was done. That was it. So she's by herself, and she becomes more like her dragons. Yeah. She becomes more like the Khaleesi she is, and not the queen she wants to be.
Yeah, and I think too the previous on Game of Thrones, as well as the opening with the maps, are always such a good clue on what the episode is going to do, because we saw in the end of the previous, you have all these different voices talking about Dany, telling her what she needs to be, what she needs to do, what kind of queen she needs to be, what kind of thing she needs to do, whatever. And I think also at that moment where she decides that she's going to burn half the city alive and knock down this stupid red building, she decides, I'm going to do exactly what I want to do.
Yeah.
Like, I am sick of people telling me how to behave and telling me what to do and telling me who I should be. And I think at that moment she really gets on with the God, what's her name? The Tyrell woman, Elena Tyrell. She is a dragon. This is her turning into the dragon that she was always supposed to be. She wasn't ever going to be this pretty princess from a Disney fairy tale land that was going to rule Westeros with crowds crying for her when she arrived on the shores.
That was the fake out. That's what got a lot of people to be like, well, that's my queen, because they imagined that in their heads. Yeah. But that was totally unintentional at the end of the day.
You just reminded me of that there's this Jorah line where she tells Jorah how all the people in Westeros are going to cheer when she arrives, and Jorah's like, the common people pray for a long summer, and
they don't give a shit about it.
They don't care who sits on the Iron Throne.
Yeah, I think she felt lied to a lot of her life, and this is like the culmination of that. Of all these lies are finally coming to the surface as she's here. And
but what is she?
It's also part of it's also like her believing certain lies.
She was gullible because, especially in the books, she's 12 years old or something. She's really young in the books, and she's still Emilia Clarke is still a very young woman, especially when we started the show. But she's still imagine especially if you've ever had a toxic person in your life or someone who's gaslighted you in your life, you believe those things because you have to hear them over and over and over again.
That's true, but she's had Jorah and Barristan and Tyrion and Varys and Missandei.
Yeah, but they're also enamored with her. Like nobody really wants to tell her the real truth.
Yeah, that's true. Except for Jon.
But she's not. But she's never been like a poor kid. It's always just like she's but sorry, go ahead, Taylor. What were you?
I was gonna say, what do you each of you suppose her calculus was? Do you think it was completely 100% unhinged irrationality, and that she's gonna have a moment in the finale where she's like, "What have I done?" Or do you think she completely thought it out and went, "I don't give a shit, I'm doing this"? But then, if that's the case, what was her end game? What did she think was gonna happen after that? That like no one's gonna mess with me. I've got Drogon. What? How did each of you take that?
It's funny that you said Endgame because it was kind of reminding me of Thanos, because I just saw Endgame again on Thursday or Friday, and he's looking so good, it's still so good. That Thanos said, his thing is he watched his planet die and never wanted that to happen again, and so that's why he said, getting rid of half the known universe, people would be grateful. And that's what he talks about with the Avengers. Like, I thought that the people left over, well, before they kill him, before they chop his head off, kill him the first time, spoilers, that he thought that people would be grateful, that he thought that, that he was saving them. And that's why he took this incredibly taxing sacrifice on himself. If he sacrificed his daughter, he just killed half the universe, to go live alone for the rest of his life. And I think Dany, in some sense, I don't think hers was as calculated as his. Mm-hmm. I think it was from a place of anger of she's just like, F this man. But like I said, I don't think she set out to kill a specific number of people. I don't think she set out to kill the entire city. I think she just kind of lost it. And, the consequences of this will be that people will fear her and probably hate her.
I'm going to read a line real quick. Wait, real quick. I'm going to read a line from Barristan Selmy from that same episode, because this is going to, this gave me chills. He says, the Mad King gave his enemies the justice he thought they deserved, and each time it made him feel powerful and right. Barristan Selmy told her. But then, and then they go on to say that then one of Dany's supporters kills that Sons of a Harpy guy anyway, claiming he was following her example. So there's something to think about. She put him on trial and sentenced him to death, which caused a riot. But because Daenerys hadn't bothered to make any consistent laws in Meereen for her people, justice was based solely on her discretion. So you've got her setting this example for these slaves that she freed, which is like, oh, I'm going to kill this guy. This is what you wanted, right? So that just alone shows her kind of lack of judgment, but just the fact that the Mad King thought the very same thing. Her father thought that the way I deal with justice, the way I deal with people who have wronged me is the correct way. As insane as it might be, no one's going to stop me. That is the right way. And she's adopted that same policy. They go on, I don't have to do it right now, but they go on to list off all the things that she's done over the course of the show. Everything from killing the witch, burning her alive, which I get to some degree, but then but then here, let me just go down. I mean, I'll try to truncate it. This is worth mentioning because this kind of paints the picture about how we got here. The witch who kidnapped Dany's baby and all that and killed it, burned alive. Zaro Zohan Doxos, the guy who staged a coup against Korth, locked inside a vault, slowly to suffocate. She ordered the Unsullied to massacre every slave master at Noble and Astafor before she freed them. So before she freed the Unsullied, she's like, just do that. Upon learning that the masters of Meereen had put 163 slaves on racks as punishment, Daenerys did it to them, to 163 of them. We might think that these people deserve their fate because they were bad, but it doesn't change the fact that Daenerys has done cruel and terrible things to her enemies. So it does come down to what was the moment for every audience member that was too far. I think, Todd, for you, it was a long time ago. I think for a lot of people, that was Sunday night. We're just like, oh. Well,
yeah. So I have a kind of meta question, because I don't think it's where we are in the books. I don't think it's not like book readers have a fundamentally different perception of Daenerys. I do think it's more about confirmation bias and what you're bringing to the story. And I was choosing all along to kind of read it as, and this is the thing, Taylor, you and I are going to talk about on the Panelism podcast this week, but so I won't go into it in detail, but I was seeing it as like, you can't be a liberator and then leave. And Emily, I think you said something great last week about that, about the
that the liberators very rarely see themselves as the conquerors, but the people that they're quote unquote liberating typically do.
Well, and you talk about how can people people are upset about this, or they didn't see it coming or whatever, but I don't know, to me this was the Hiroshima moment. And if you look at this very real event in our history for some 70 something years, people have been justifying that absolutely vicious, awful, terrible slaughter of all these innocent people in the worst way ever. Because of some weird, interpolitical like global politics and strategy or something. Like, well, we had to do it because we had to show them that we would go that far. Oh, you had to be the monster to show them that you're that they're being a monster, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, there are moments like when Arya's running through the city and finds the child burned. I mean, that was so profound to me, and moving for a work of fiction, I think, because of course, first of all, there's like the Pompeian ruins where you've seen people like caught in
I thought September 11th.
That, oh God, I didn't even think about
especially
that.
All these people covered in dust and coughing and bloody and just dazed. Like that was the first images coming out of September 11th. That's what it really reminded me of.
Well, and I was thinking a lot about Hiroshima. They found bodies in poses that were just like incinerated instantly over there. And clothing like imprinted on the skin of the people because the heat was so intense. And that's what was going through my head when I saw that. And I don't really have anything else there except that we will go to great lengths to qualify our own biases that we bring to things because we think that we don't want to think we're wrong. There's a really great evolutionary reason that we think that, we have to survive. But I
would be curious to see what somebody who lived through World War II or was, fought in World War II, especially in the Asian Pacific side of things, what they would think of this episode, because they had to deal with that in real life as a country. Even if you're like a 10-year-old kid and you in that time, America did this to Japan. And now imagine going to Japan as a tourist or having a friend who's Japanese or Japanese heritage. You've had to deal with all that in your real life. And now so many people watching this show, this is the first and only time maybe a whole chunk of generations have had to go through these same mental questions, these same internal questions, these kind of moral quandaries. I would be curious what somebody who's already gone through it would think of this episode, if it would trigger them or if they'd be like, oh no, this is what happens. I mean, it just would be curious to know.
Yeah. There's a moment in this I want to point out, because I think, Emily, you'll be able to riff on this too, is that little girl that is hiding behind the column.
Oh shit, man.
And you see her face, that girl, for being on screen for 20 seconds was
I'm gonna remember her for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
I'll remember her.
She's hiding behind a column right after everything goes to shit, and the Northerners
she's really
are
young, right?
Attacking her mom and stuff. Yeah. And she her face goes from fear to sadness, and then this just concrete anger. And I was the whole time just going holy shit, you are watching the radicalization of the local person when the conqueror comes to town. Yep. That's how you make
the
radical
thing. Yep. Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
God, that's
that little girl. I don't know who she is. I'm gonna go back and look what her actress's name is, because it was really, really incredible. And I love that they turned the sound down so you could really just hear her breathing. And I mean, I think this whole episode, honestly, and we've been talking about a lot of just real life sort of events like this of we really did get to watch the birth of the next rebel. I mean, our story is ending, but this is exactly, I mean, I don't really want to get too far into politics, but
no, go for it.
When we invaded Afghanistan and Iraq, I mean, it's not like ISIS just sprung out of the ground. It's and I'm not saying that our invasion of them is to blame for the rise of ISIS, but you can kind of see where maybe some of these young people are coming from, of where they've only known American soldiers to be occupying their country, to have killed their fathers and brothers. And, since they were little kids, to see, as much as they always show us here in the United States, they always show us the pictures of the little kids running next to the tanks and getting chocolate and smiling. There's probably a lot of kids, not just in Afghanistan and Iraq, but Arabs all over the world, Muslims all over the world, who've probably seen Americans in a completely different light than we as Americans ever see ourselves.
Oh, and your point about the conquerors always see themselves as liberators.
Yeah.
That they also don't recognize that they are radicalizing generations, like
absolutely
in that way. Yeah.
And I mean, there's a lot of different factors. It's an incredibly complex, like socio-political debate about all these kinds of things. But, you know, it was interesting to see that, especially just like that little girl, you know, her parents are probably dead. Her city is destroyed. And just the changes of emotions on her face was so perfect. A perfect description of how the remaining people are probably going to view Dany as
think about
she
this.
comes to conquer them.
That girl was having this episode for that girl was the same episode where Arya saw Ned Stark beheaded. Like that is I mean, fast forward 10 years to that little girl. Where does she go? What does she do? What list does she write now? It's like, I'm going to kill that woman who destroyed my life. Mm-hmm. And that started in this episode. I just want to say, as you were talking, Emily, like, and that Afghanistan comparison is a good one. I wanted to be like, there's a lot of people out there right now who are getting just absolutely dumped on because they basically said, just so you all know, I'm embarrassed that Daenerys is from Westeros. A la the Dixie Chicks. I just was thinking that same, because it really is there's sort of an irrational thing going on with some people, some contingent of the fan base who had this stars in their eyes view of Daenerys, just, you know, like, and are easily, when you're confronted with the truth that this thing that you sort of put your faith and hope into isn't necessarily the best person in the world, or might even be the villain in this whole situation. It's a hard pill to swallow if you have really surrendered yourself to that idea. Just like, I mean, you could, the same thing applies to a country, to a leader, locally, nationally. You know, it is dangerous to put so much stock in any person, whether it be fictitious or real, that you can't handle it when something goes wrong or when they truly do something bad.
Which is so much of like Varys's point of like from last episode of like when people start talking about destiny and shit like that, like
that's like a red flag.
And I made one of the notes I made was like, have Dany stans been supporting a Rumsfeldian neocon for 8 years? Because here is Dany Rumsfeld, who comes to the other country and expects to be welcomed as this hero liberator, and it's like, girl, you've just been causing trouble all throughout Essos, you know, and then you bring all the armies from Essos that could actually protect against the slavers to this country and get them all freaking killed.
Todd, you said it in a text. Robert Baratheon was freaking right.
I put that in my low light for the episode.
I don't know about that, but like
he said, can you imagine a Dothraki horde like in Westeros?
Yeah, I mean,
and
that's true.
Yeah, and he was, you know, also like murder the Targaryens.
Yeah.
God, that is a bit. See, the Dany stands have to swallow their pill, but we have to swallow the pill that Robert
Baratheon was right. Like, God damn it.
Oh my god. I love this. I love this discussion. I feel like we're like off track in the outline I made, but it's really good.
Off track in a good way. Scratch out like 10 things.
Oh my gosh. I mean, there's so many, like, there are little moments that I wanted to get into, but and also while we've been talking, I got a notification on my phone that it was a headline from Wired UK that said, why this episode was the worst Game of Thrones episode ever. And I'm like, worst ever? I actually think it was so well assembled. Like, technically, I am just
very good. Yeah.
It was so beautiful. And even so, here's the moment I wanted to bring up. I made one of my other notes is a war. What is it good for? Was what I asked last week. And this week I wrote the Golden Company. Good God, y'all. What are they good for? But I actually wasn't even annoyed by that. Like in other ways, I would have thought, you know, in past seasons, I would have been like, that's weird. They brought like 1,000 people over to just get wiped out in one go.
Can we? I mean, we're sort of touching on highlights, lowlights, but I will have to say the one thing that did infuriate me is just from a technical standpoint, like just lazy writing standpoint, was the ease of which she was able to take out all those scorpions, especially after an episode where she had no idea what was coming and like it just ripped one of her other dragons apart. There wasn't even a struggle. She just, I mean, dump, and done, and they were all gone. And Qyburn, just it was the most anticlimactic thing. It's like they are all gone. That
was
just like
JK.
a little hand wavy.
That's it.
I did think that upon rewatching it, and thinking quite a bit about it, as much as like strategies of the long night, I quibbled with. So again, I don't know if my confirmation bias is speaking here or not, but I did see that. Okay, well, the way to beat them is to go fast and low, and and the thing she does at the beginning where she is up in the sun, where they can't get a good bead on her, because they're having to stare straight up at the sun. It was like, actually, all of that makes sense because it was really hand wavy. Like having one jet fighter take out all of those things was ridiculous. But I think her strategy was right on, which was like come in at their level and move quickly, and they can't turn quick enough to get another shot off.
Yeah, and like because we saw them too, if they're like reload, and like by the time you're gonna reload, you're gonna be dead. Like that's what she waited for. Like she waited from the fire, then came in as they're reloading or trying to aim.
Yeah.
So I mean, I think she just learned. Like she just was like, okay, I get it now. I get how these operate. Like they were taken so off guard, they'd never seen that before when it killed Rhaegal, that she just was like, okay, now I have a strategy for dealing with this. And if she did it I wrote it in my notes, like she did it in the immediacy of that she took out the most dangerous things to her and to the rest of her forces. That she took out they call them scorpions. I call them ballistas because that's what they are.
Yeah.
She took out the ballistas, then took out the ground, tried to take out as many ground forces as she possibly could. So to pave the way for her army to already break into the city without losing a lot of casualties. And so that was like super smart. Like that's probably one of the best plans that we've seen.
Yeah. And I think, Taylor texted me last night right after the episode, and we touched on it here, but I that moment of her sitting on the wall on the dragon and looking at the Red Keep, I mean, I just thought this was a great moment of filmmaking of like, all she has to do is fly straight at that thing and destroy it. And this is like a perfect strategic siege of a city, and that moment of tension of,
if she wanted to be the breaker of chains,
what's going to happen?
She tears down that Red Keep and says, guess what? We're going to a democracy now, bitches. Here we go. There is no Iron Throne. I just destroyed it. That would have been a moment truly worthy, I think, of a lot of the Daenerys diehards like vision of her. And it didn't happen. So it's like, okay, that didn't happen. That's where we are. But that moment really, that basically defined the rest of the show.
Yeah.
That very moment where she decided that, okay, everything else hinges on that decision to just go, oh, I don't care.
I mean, just back to the artful direction of this episode, I felt myself so unsatisfied and like something was off at that moment of like, wow, this was way too easy and it was hand wavy, and I'm thinking in my head of like, oh, I got all these criticisms of what happened, and then once she flew off, once the bells start ringing and there's that moment of like, which by the way, Emily, you brought up all the voices and that we hear at the beginning of the like previously on those bells, like that seems like such a like parallel to that of like there's this picture of her face and all the bells ringing sort of cacophonously, and I don't know, at that moment it was like, oh, now the shit's coming.
And for me too, because I have anxiety, like it was like almost like input overload, like where it's like the bells are ringing, people are screaming, people are yelling, her dragon is roaring, and I was like, that I would have snapped too.
Oh my god!
Kill everyone so they stopped talking to me. Like,
do you think that's why Cersei was so kind of weak sauce in the latter part of the episode? Is that she just was shocked into complete submission?
She actually has. She also has this really weird experience for anyone on the show, which is she makes a lot of plans and they go right.
Yeah,
a lot. And then now it's gone so wrong.
Yeah, but just her tears that she was shedding of just like her exterior facade, this sort of completely confident, calculating woman, finally just like everything you wanted is just none of it worked. It's all falling apart for once.
So if you want to, we're talking about plans. Who had the best plan of everyone? Arya and the Hound, where they just strolled right into True. Like, hey, I'm gonna go kill your queen. The guy's and then the Hound's like the voice reason, like, just let her do it. It'll be over. You could probably not die. And that guy's like, okay, sure, come on in. It was perfect.
A highlight. What about Clegane Bowl? Was it everything you hoped for? Was it? I was so enamored that they delivered it in a setting that was unexpected.
Yeah, that's it. When we were watching it, Peter was like, "This feels like Dark Souls. Like this is like a Dark Souls boss battle of like there's dragons flying overhead and the walls are crumbling and you're fighting this big ass zombie dude." And like, it was. I liked it. I mean, I thought it was like. We've expected it for so long that finally, now that it was here, I was like, finally. But it wasn't really cool. Like that they did a lot of really good, shots of the post-apocalyptic, like everything's falling around. They're so focused on each other. And, ultimately the Hound got what he wanted. And I think it was really inside the episode, they said they knew they had to give him a death by fire, like to kind of make it. Yeah. They said exactly. And Pennywise, they're so good at these kinds of things. Like they said, the only thing that could make him go into the fire is the person that gave him the fear of fire. Like that's the only thing that matters more than he's just like, fuck it. Like he knows he can't kill him. He's just stabbed him through the face and he's not dead. Nobody goes for the head, by the way. Like people need to learn this. And then they just tumble down into the fire. And I think it was one of my coolest deaths of the whole series because it was like, what a blaze of literally a blaze of glory for the Hound. And like, what a full circle of like him trying to protect Arya, him finally getting to face his true fear. And that's the brother. And then, ending them both in this glorious death.
Did you notice though? I got a little queasy because he started to squeeze the Hound's head just like he did Oberon's. And I was like, oh God, is this just going to end with him victorious? Like, is this really going to happen?
I was looking away too.
I love that they brought that actor back and actually showed you what he looked like underneath the helmet. That was a little surprising and satisfying at the same time. I was like, oh, here we go.
Well, it's still not
his name. His real name is his little name is Thor, but it's not Odin's son. But
it's still not the original dude. It's
the original dude from the first episode, but it is the dude who killed Oberon. That's that same guy.
Giant hulking man. Like it was just like, man, I would not want to fight that guy. And the Hound was just like, whatever. Here we go. We're doing this.
Other highlights were there or lowlights? I guess
I got two.
I hesitated because I was going to say highlights, like deaths, and then I went, that's not a highlight.
No, that's a low light. In fact, Varys' death. But I have two specific highlights. One is Drogon's head coming out of the shadows right before he fries Varys, and just the dispassionate way she goes, Dracarys. And it's just like I thought as soon as she said that way, I was like, oh, she's done. There's no going back. She's so dispassionate. I mean, every time she gets to say Dracarys, she always like brings the thunder. And this is the first time she's just like, Dracarys. And Drogon just appears, and it was a little hokey, but it was so cool to see that. And then the other even more amazing visual was just that gate blowing up from the inside out. God, when you heard that going on, you're just like, what is happening? What's gonna come out of there? Like, what is going on? And then just it blows the hell up and just all over the Golden Company. You're like, okay, they're leaving it all. They're taking it all off the table.
Drogon did not come to play. Okay?
Nope.
He came to slay, literally.
Emily, highlights that we haven't touched on yet?
I really liked, there were a lot, but I think just like I'll probably defend Danny to like my last dying breath. Like I'll be like surrounded by all my great grandkids, and they'll be like, "Grandma, what do you want to say?" And I go, "Danny was still cool." And then
you're like, Varys, I hope I'm wrong.
Yeah. I still, as much as people hate Cersei, as much as she's been the bad guy for a couple of seasons and really all the seasons, I still respect the hell out of her as a strong female character, just a strong character of her incredible intelligence and her strategy and her dedication to her family and her house. And, it was really interesting. I thought the final moment where you saw her crack, where she's looking out and she sees Drogon and Dany sitting on the walls and she's crying and she knows that it's time, and she just, very gently takes Qyburne's hand and lets him lead her away. And if I love it too, like before the Clegane Bowl, that she just kind of like sneaks around them like, I know this is mine.
Yeah. No one mind me. Goodbye, gentlemen.
And just like her overwhelming emotion of like laugh, crying, smile, crying when she sees Jaime, and just how happy she is to see him, and especially down in the, what is it called, like Maegor's Watch or something, where they keep all the dragons.
Maegor's Keep or Hold or something.
Yeah, Maegor's Hoard. Yeah, and that she's finally realizing that this is the end, and it was so sad, especially just as a woman, of like that she didn't talk about so much that herself, that she didn't want to die, but it was for not herself, that it was for her child. She didn't want to die because she wanted to be a mom again, and she wanted this child to live and grow up in a world, and that was really heartbreaking for me, I think, and probably for a lot of people, of just, had this really tough exterior that she's always portrayed and had to portray. And, finally in the end, I think you got to see a little bit of her true colors, of how passionate she is about being a mother, and, how much she already loved this child that she'll never know. And I think that is incredibly sad. And I think honestly a highlight though is that Jaime and Cersei got to die together, because that's what we've said all along. And a lot of people had theories of like he was going to kill her, that something was going to happen, but we all kind of knew, they came into this world together, and they got to go out together. And I think they, it wasn't like a blaze of glory. They didn't have to see each other get executed. They didn't, he didn't have to kill her. She didn't have to kill him. They just held each other and went out quietly, and they'll find, maybe they'll find him later and confirm that they're dead, but like there was no spectacle. It was just them. And I thought that was actually a really, really fitting death for them. So that was like a highlight.
Have you gone back and read the
oh, go ahead.
Sorry, the Valonqar prophecy? Have you read that since you watched it?
Yes, I have. And I was like, oh, great. Perfect.
So Taylor, this is what it is. And when your tears have drowned you, the Valonqar shall wrap his hands around your pale white throat.
Oh, yeah. Wow.
And choke the life from you.
Yeah.
So except for the choke the life from you, like,
well, they probably
die
of asphyxiation a little bit, because
yeah.
Down there.
But I mean, it's not like the Valonqar kills her, but all that also happened. Her she's drowning in her tears, and little brother puts his arms around her neck.
Yeah.
Anyway, our friend Drew pointed out that he really loved that coming, the coming circle of the Valonqar prophecy. So
I do want to say, I do want to tack onto that though another highlight, which is that scene between Jaime and Tyrion, where Tyrion says his goodbye, and Dinklage just kind of wrings out all the emotion you can get out of that scene, and it's even more poignant having seen how Jaime goes out, because you think, oh my God, Cersei did show herself to be human in the end. She showed vulnerability, like that she could have had a life if they had just gotten out sooner. Tyrion's plan could have given her herself back. Essentially, and it's just like I'm all the sadder now that it didn't get to happen, and poor Tyrion trying to put that together. Now he's probably going to die.
Yeah, and
as a result of that.
It proves too. Like I've said this a lot, of the Tyrion is the best of all of them.
Yeah,
in a moral sense, of that, even though Cersei was horrible to him and his family was horrible to him, and that in general the world has been horrible to him, he's still willing to sacrifice himself to make sure not only that his brother and sister could escape, and unborn niece or nephew could escape and have a life, but that the people of King's Landing could live, hopefully. That he was willing to betray his queen and betray this person who will probably kill him, so that others could live. And I think it was just an all around beautiful moment. And I really fear for him.
You know what else I'm happy about though? Guess what? Not a secret Targaryen. Guess what? Jaime and Cersei, not secret Targaryens. Yeah. They're ending the show with all three of them as actual Lannisters, and I love that. I'm so glad.
Yeah.
Totally.
I think I started saying this earlier and never got back to it, but but back in the books, although where Daenerys is in the books is she's still out on her own with Drogon. None of that has happened. She's never gone back to the Horde has not captured her or anything like that. They're just eating sheep out in the fields. But I'm curious if So we think we know that Benny Wise got the ending from George R. R. Martin.
Oh, they did for sure.
So, I mean, we know they've said that.
Yeah.
And I guess they probably, I guess I shouldn't say it like couched like that. Like they have. It's just a question now of will he change it because he's upset with other parts of the show or something. But yeah. I would say as a reader, my take from the books is that there haven't been like more hints that Daenerys is like mad, sort of like her father, like just like a mental illness, but the jury's out on it, you know? Yeah. And I don't know. I guess what I'm appreciating is in the show, what you brought up, Emily, that whole theme of nature versus nurture is like, she's just, you know, she is not necessarily mad by her nature, or sorry, by her. Yeah.
Yeah. Wait, by her nature.
Yes. By her nature, but she has been nurtured to become this person all along.
Yeah, exactly.
And in the book, I don't know. We don't know where we're going to come down on that, but it's
a lot less things have happened to her, at least at this point in the books. I mean, there could have been a lot more discussing like horrible things happening in the other books, but yeah, at the point that we are in the books, she's just still kind of like a beautiful, starry-eyed princess whose, you know, husband was brutally, you know, like murdered, and her babies are now dragons, and like that we haven't gotten to see as much of her having to fight for her life and fight for what she believes in and like fight for all this stuff that's happened in the show.
I mean, I don't like her in the books either, but I think actually in the books there's more examples of her ruining cities that she comes to liberate. There's that whole, I can't remember, Astapor or Marine or something, where there's that whole like basically encampment outside the city where everyone has some horrible disease.
Oh yeah.
Like way too many chapters on that. And it's probably just one, but it's gross.
Yeah.
Sure,
and, I feel like it was longer.
Yeah, it felt longer. It definitely felt long. Boy, do you think, this was the question I wanted to circle back around to, do you think, what percentage is the show different now, the ending, than the books are going to be? Like, are we somewhere where George Martin was aiming? What do you think, Emily?
I mean, I think for probably like the three really central characters, so that's Dany, Jon, and Tyrion, we are probably really close to what their book endings would have been, or could have been. I don't know if they'll ever end up writing the rest of these books. I actually had this really horrible thought today thinking about this same thing of like, oh my God, what if he's already written them, but he didn't want to spoil the show for us? And then like as soon next week, as soon as the show's done, like 3 books are going to come out. I was like, oh my God.
That's crazy.
That's crazy.
We did hear that when Jon died.
Yeah, that's crazy. Anyway, so I think though, at least some of the other people, maybe like the journey is a lot different in the books, but the end was kind of like Sansa Stark is the one that I think of the most, because when we last see her in the book, she's still in the Vale, and she's like kind of being prepped to rule the Vale with little Lord Aaron. Sorry, spoilers for non-bookers, but you know, there's a lot of characters like that where if the things that hadn't happened in the show didn't happen, or that happened in the show didn't happen in the books, I don't know if they would be where they are. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
So, but I think for the central characters, the 3 central characters that we followed pretty much most of the time, I think. Oh, and Arya. I think Arya is probably also really close to what her ending was going to be, especially killing the Night King. So 4 characters.
Is she still blind in the books?
Oh man, is she?
Dang. I don't know. She's blind for so long in the books, and it was like 1 episode in the show.
I totally forgot that. Yeah. So I think the main characters are probably the very closest, and then kind of maybe some of the other characters are closer, and then there's probably some people who like survived the whole book series but are dead right now. Like, we don't know. Maybe we'll never know.
You've actually renewed my interest in him finishing the books, in that now they like, what if they are pure fan fiction that sort of whitewashes the like icky feelings I have about everything from
oh my God, that'd be so funny.
Like what if Sansa really just marry Robin, and he turns out to be a great guy?
She marries Golden Henry or whatever his name is. He's like Lord
Henry.
Yeah, he's like Lord Royce's ward or whatever. He's like this handsome like.
And this is Golden Henry.
I forget what his name is, but they call
I've
him like
named him
the Golden
his
Knight.
Skin glistens.
Well,
morning dew.
Yeah, like Sandor is just happily digging graves.
Yeah.
It's just like, no, I got a good job. I'm not.
Brienne is dead. That they hung her in the books, and like,
did they?
Who knows if she's dead? Who knows if she's dead or alive?
Lets her go, right?
Oh, I
think that's early on, because then she goes and meets the Hound after that when she's the gravedigger and she gets stabbed.
Oh, that's right.
Ambush.
Can I just say, I cannot wait for the next and final episode where Stannis Baratheon comes to claim his final victory with the help of Lady Stoneheart and Tom Bombadil.
Oh my God.
It's going to happen. We're finally going to see her. She's going to come striding across, and she will become queen of Westeros. It will happen. It will happen.
What? So predictions for next week. Besides Lady Stoneheart. Covered.
Like,
okay, check. Got it. Yeah.
We should have a Deadpool for next week, because I think that's probably the most crucial question.
God, who's even left?
Well, do you think, I mean, just a big prediction, is there going to be a fight? Or is it like the Northerners just retreat and go, fuck, we're right back in the same place? And I don't know. I mean, there's got to be, I mean, there will for sure be conflict, but what is it? Who cares? I don't know. God, that was the most, Star Killer base, or like Darth Vader from early Star Wars scene when in the upcoming, like in the next week on, when Daenerys walks out and all the Dothraki are cheering her.
Yeah.
All the Death Eaters.
All the Death Eaters.
I mean, seriously, there was a couple moments in this episode where, like, I was just like, oh, it's Dany and her Death Eaters. There they are. Like, when the Northmen themselves all start dressing in black and start raping and pillaging, and Jon's like, wait, you're from the North. What are you doing? I just thought it turned what should have been like a triumphant moment into Voldemort at the borders of Hogwarts, just like, let's go, guys, let's go, gang. And then you find out Jon Snow just looks around and goes, wait, I'm not a Death Eater. What? I don't understand. So,
like Draco Malfoy. He had a Draco Malfoy moment.
He did. He totally did.
Yeah.
I do think Daenerys is gonna die. I think Tyrion's gonna die. I think Tyrion's gonna be an early death. I think she's gonna execute him.
But why would he go back to her? I feel like after what he watched, he's gonna walk out with Jon.
But walk out where? He's going to get, I mean, there's Dothraki and Unsullied everywhere. They're going to pick him up. They'll get him.
He's kind of easy to spot.
I do think part of me wants to believe Arya is going to kill Dany, because otherwise why keep her in King's Landing if not for that moment? And then she can kill both the Night King and Dany, and then sure. I do think Jon's going to die as well.
Really?
Yep.
And then it's just Sansa, and she.
I don't think there's going to be any king or queen or rest. I think it's going to be regional factions again.
Yeah.
And there will be no. I mean, King's Landing is gone. What is there to lord over? Like there's no Iron Throne. There's no. I mean, it's there somewhere under the rubble. But what's the point? I do think. I mean, maybe this is sort of the bring balance to the Force in a weird way, kind of route where it's like, hey, and this is going back to Emily's question, or Todd, I think your question. I think the show ending is going to be, it has now become wildly different from what Martin's going to write. The same people may die by that point, but I think what was maybe a 70% similarity now went down to 40 or 50% after he saw what they did. Just a hunch. But I do think Jon's done. I think Jon's gone. I think where we end up is all these regional places kind of just become their own kingdoms again, because that seems to be the best way to go forward. It seems once everything's under one unified rule, it's constant fighting, the wheel turns, and this game keeps getting played. Let's just shut the game down, put the board away. We're done.
Emily?
Sorry to be a buzzkill, but
I was I know. I was trying to run through my brain, who's left.
It's funny because I was on a wiki of Ice and Fire seeing if Arya was still blind. She is not. She is just now a mummer in the theater group.
Oh, okay, that's right. Okay, so I think the Stark girls are going to be okay. I think the rest of the remaining Starks will probably live and be Wardens of the North or Rulers of the North. I think Tyrion will die. I think Dany will kill him, and it'll be super sad. And I think that will kind of be the snapping point for Jon. And it'll be super sad because he does love her, even if he's, sort of grossed out by the romantic love now because they're nephew and aunt. But I think he truly does love her and respect her. But I think that's kind of like that's the end all be all of watching her turn into this person that he doesn't know anymore. So I think he will kill her. I think John will kill her. It would be super, super sad. Who else is alive? Who do I care about?
I mean, like you pointed out, or both of you pointed out, like her court is gone. Like it's just Grey Worm,
And we don't even know if he's actually alive. I didn't see him in the end. He could be dead somewhere.
And oh man, that look he gave to John when John was calling his troops back.
Shit. I mean, that's another thing we didn't really talk about grief besides Danny, but a lot of these people are operating on grief too. Yep. Grey Worm included. Grey Worm maybe most of all. She was the only thing that was meant besides like a loyalty to Danny because she's his savior and freer and commander or whatever. Missandei was the only thing that kind of like held Grey Worm to this world. But yeah, man, that's my biggest prediction. I think Danny is gonna have to die, and I think John will be the one to do it. And I kind of agree with Taylor. I think that it would be interesting if, that still John is like, I don't want to rule. I don't want to do this. I think even if he kills Danny, there will be some sort of democratic system brought in of that kind of every region rules themselves. And John can just go off and live in the North with Ghost or do whatever he wants after this. I kind of hope that's what he gets. That's what he deserves, honestly.
Yeah, I agree. Maybe, after Arya has had this, I feel like she's kind of had an awakening, like, and realized like she'd been pursuing death for so long. What's it like to try to save life? I'm curious if she looks for Gendry, and not to be a lady of a castle, but if she makes some arrangement with him, like, look, I'm not going to be a lady of the castle, but like, I don't want to go murder people anymore.
Yeah. My first instinct was she was rushing back to Winterfell to make sure that Sansa was going to be okay.
Yeah,
that was my first instinct.
Yeah, that is really where I want to see her, like just being like the badass.
Yeah.
Do you think Danny flies to Winterfell to exact revenge, or do you think we keep her in the South for the remainder?
It is really interesting. The position we're in is like very curious because Daenerys, in doing that, proved herself worse than Aerys. She's the one who actually ignited all the wildfire under the city and literally burned them all. Whereas Aerys just threatened to do it.
Her father, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, wait, that's Aerys. Yeah.
Aerys the second.
But they said Varys at first. I was like,
no, Aerys. All these names.
And she is now like almost worse than Cersei. Like Cersei did kind of look out for people. Cersei was a politician in that way. She did blow them all up in the Sept, sure, but she did other things to appease. Like she was playing the politics of it, like how to appease certain people and blah blah blah. But Daenerys has done none of that. So
yeah, we actually went back in like the next week's episode to when she's coming out, like her Darth Vader moment of like coming out on the steps, because Peter wanted to see kind of more what it looks like, and it was really hard to tell whether everything was gray because it's ash or gray because it's snow. Because there would still be snow in the north. Yeah. So I guess we'll find out.
Remember her vision in the tower? Yeah. She saw an ash or snow-covered king's like throne room that the roof was caved in. It was like Notre Dame. It's just like, and the throne was there, and it just like, I remember just seeing that scene and going, "What would she be the queen? What's the whole point?" And you think at that point, watching that scene, oh, the White Walkers have killed everybody, and winter has come, and it's all gone. But never did you think, oh no, she did that.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I totally forgot about that. That's a really, really good point.
Yeah. We also, just to tag onto that, we finally got this scene that was hinted at like 3 years ago where you see the shadow of the dragon flying over King's Landing.
Oh, yeah. That was cool, too. Yeah.
That was crazy.
Good pick. Yeah. Wow.
Whoa. I don't know that I have any other predictions than the ones you had. I think Daenerys has to die. And I wonder if she and John go down together, because I see him as sort of the only one that could get close enough to do it.
Yeah. He's like the Wolverine to the Dark Phoenix.
Yeah. Arya could in like a roguish way, but I don't, that, you can't keep pulling the same trick like over and over.
Yeah,
and
I know.
I don't know that she has, I mean, certainly she has motivation to do it, but it doesn't seem like her fight. It seems like she would recognize, like, John, you made this mess.
She's your girlfriend, John. You have to deal with it.
Yeah, she's back at Winterfell with Sansa, like, oh, I do not like this new girl that John is with. He was much better off with that redhead.
Yeah.
Other than that, I'm pretty speechless. I really did. I mean, when this episode finished, I thought Taylor texted me almost as soon as he finished, which was a couple minutes before I did, and so I had time to reflect and think, wow, I think I'm completely satisfied. Like, I just thought the filmmaking was wonderful, and like the pace of it, all the character moments and the action for sure. Yeah, just I was blown away. So, that may be all we need to say.
I think we'll have plenty more to say after next week. That is for sure.
I just can't believe it's over. It's over. Like I just can't even believe it.
The whole thing. Oh my gosh. I mean, whatever we've had with it over the years, and it's bad treatment of women and minorities, like it's problematic themes and things like that, which we can talk about for years to come. This is one of the there's no way not to put it in that like pantheon of Lord of the Rings, Star Wars, Harry Potter. Like, this is among the best fantasy works ever done.
Absolutely.
Like, book and
it's also the end of another era, though, too. I mean, we've said goodbye to basically the MCU as we know it earlier this month, and now it's like Game of Thrones, same thing. I mean, it's adorable that they're like, you'll love the Watchmen too, right? TikTok,
More like,
TikTok.
No.
I don't know, man.
Damon Lindelof is attached. Probably not.
John Johnson showed up, though. I was on board.
Oh yeah.
You know what? I had the same reaction. I'm like, oh, Don Johnson.
Hey, not to get off topic with that, but Jeremy Irons has to be Adrian Veidt, right?
Yes.
Oh,
they confirmed that. Yeah,
absolutely. And that's, speaking of new shows too, they do also have 1 or 2 Game of Thrones shows in the works as well. They at least have one where it's the oh god, he has the sword that's like Dawn, and we saw him in
Sir Arthur
Dane. Sir Arthur Dane. Yeah. I think one of the series stars him, and then there's another series in the works as well. So that'll be interesting. But it's never, it's never going to be the same. Just like The Hobbit was never going to be the same as Lord of the Rings. Like it's almost like, why? Just leave it at this. Like, we know you want to make money, but this series was basically will go down in history as one of the greatest series of all time. Like, why try to ruin it with spinoffs?
What if Darth Vader were a little kid?
Oh, Christ.
Jesus.
Do you guys like the Mad King?
Yeah.
What was he like as a baby?
Oh, don't even tease that. I don't want to have a series where I root for Aerys Targaryen as like he lost his mind. He's going to burn people now. Yeah. Like, I don't want a scene where a young Jaime Lannister like stabs him in slow motion and we're like, oh, goodbye, Aerys. Like, that's not happening. Oh, God. Oh, I don't want that. Because, that's how you shoehorn in Tyrion as a secret Targaryen without addressing it in the show. You have it, you put it there. So it's like, oh, yeah, Aerys truly loved Tyrion's mother. And so he didn't rape her. No, it was misunderstood. And then, God.
Nope.
Ugh.
I kind of want to see this now. It's like, Zac Efron is Jaime Lannister. Taylor Lautner is Khal Drogo.
Oh my God.
Well, give Taylor Lautner something to do. That's
true.
Be the frog.
If it keeps Lautner employed, I guess we can't. It's not all bad.
Send it in, Todd.
I recently did watch Twilight Breaking Dawn, which is the second one, if I'm not mistaken, because my wife is obsessed and she gets on little kicks where she'll binge them. And so I'm like, let me tune in and see what I missed. Oh yeah, not much. But I bring this up because I am firmly on Team Jacob. And that is because Taylor Lautner does such a great job.
Nice person.
Yeah, well, no, Taylor Lautner, you're just like, well, clearly she should have ended up with him. Like, why the hell did she waste 1 second longer with Edward? I'll never know. So there you are.
Because Mormonism. That's why.
Yep. Took the words right out of my mouth. Great way to wrap up. Emily, where can people find you if they want to talk with you, discuss your views on Mormonism?
Please do. I would love that. My cousins are Mormon, so I have a lot to talk about. You can find me on Instagram and Twitter at that Emily Kelly.
Taylor, where can people find this fine podcast?
Wherever you get your podcasts. You can also find us at panelism.ink. That's panelism.inc, which is a website URL and an Instagram account where you can catch up on all of our shows and content and things and more to come. You can also search for our other sister show that Todd and I host called Panelism, where we review comics and graphic novels and other geek sort of things.
We're going to be talking about some fantasy stuff this week. I'm excited about that.
Yeah, we're going to have a sort of a conversation that tangentially connects to this one in some ways. So tune in there if you want to hear more different flavor than Wednesday in Westeros. Sadly, Emily's not with us, but we get by.
We've had Emily on several episodes.
We have.
We'll again, hopefully.
That's true.
I have a rare self-plug, only because this came up in the final moments here, which is I wrote a short book on Mormonism and the White Horse prophecy several years ago. So I think you should go buy that on Amazon.
Immediate buy.
It is called So Much for the White Horse. And it's under Todd A. That's my author name. But anyway, I guess until next week, and we'll come on, let's be honest. We'll talk again about Game of Thrones after the season. So yeah, coming rewatches and all that. But 7 blessings to you all.
And Azor Ahai to you.
And what do we say to the Lord of Death? Last chance, bitch.